So, is this bad? Starship re-enters over populated areas and airliners need to be diverted. Is this a problem? Starbase ramps up for flight number 8 already. How long until the next Starship flies? Vast is making a new space station. Will this be enough? Stoke Space is building a pad. China is launching a reusable rocket. How did it go? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. It's been a little over a week now since Flight 7 passed, and yet there is still new information coming out about it daily. Some of the most intriguing pieces of news of this have to do with Ship 33, but rather than the information being about what happened to Ship 33 while it was in one piece, much of this information is about what happened to it after it was in many pieces. What about its re-entry? Some of the debris from the ship was able to make it back down to the ground. The majority of it was light heat shield tiles that broke off and could survive re-entry and float a fair distance to be picked up on land. However, there are a few reported incidents of heavier pieces of debris making it all the way to the ground. Including an incident that damaged a car. However, there have fortunately been no reported injuries, and these reports are relatively small and only involve minor damage. Still, this is a good example of why SpaceX has taken so many precautions with these early test flights and why, despite having flown 7 times now, SpaceX still has not put Starship into orbit. Fortunately, whenever Starship broke up during this flight, the majority of its debris was over the ocean, with only the relatively sparse Turks and Caicos Islands anywhere near. And this is precisely where the reports have come from. The FAA and SpaceX will likely be investigating these reports thoroughly to determine the exact cause and possible ways to prevent it in the future. Although this does show a potential problem with Starship, as once SpaceX does begin attempting to catch the ship, it will be required to fly over relatively highly populated land to return to Boca Chica. In the event of a failed re-entry or an incident on the way to orbit or on the way back down, these areas may be at risk. While this may seem like an existential crisis for Starship, it's important to remember that you likely have an airplane flying over your head while watching this, and yet there are no issues. Once Starship begins flying regularly and proves its reliability, these issues should quickly disappear. Hopefully. However, until then, Starship is a risk and steps need to be taken to ensure everyone's safety. This is likely why SpaceX waited so long before attempting a full catch and why we may not see it for a bit longer until they are fully confident that they can get the ship to the pad. So far, the FAA is quiet and SpaceX is busy with the investigation. Even airliners needed to divert due to Ship 33. SpaceX is saying that Starship's Flight 8 could be as early as the beginning of March, but until the investigation comes to a conclusion, we'll have to wait for more information. Things are moving fast on the ground at Starbase. After the whirlwind of emotions that was Flight 7, teams have been hard at work almost everywhere. The moment the dust settles on almost every flight, all attention is focused on one place: the launch pad. Unfortunately, the pad doesn't have a very good track record of being able to withstand the launches and often needs massive amounts of refurbishment. And although work has begun on the pad, it does appear quite a bit slower than what we've seen after previous flights. Instead, it appears much of SpaceX's attention at the launch site is on a different pad. Pad B has been flying up faster than the concrete of Pad A during the first flight test. After a brief pause to wait until after Flight 7, workers began prepping the tower for its final phase, during which it receives its chopsticks and its ship quick disconnect. After quite a bit of prep work and SpaceX rolling the chopstick carriage to the pad on the night of the 19th, both chopstick catch arms, having received essentially all the finishing touches, were loaded onto SPMTs and rolled down Highway 4. They then arrived at the launch site where workers began the final prep work for constructing the full chopstick assembly. Instead of building the chopsticks on the tower itself, SpaceX assembles them on the ground and then attaches the fully complete chopsticks to a series of skits attached to rails on the tower. This ensures that the assembly can easily slide up and down the tower, raising and lowering boosters and ships and ultimately catching them. Although these chopsticks aren't exactly the same as the ones on Tower A, as these are actually quite a bit shorter. T-Rex arms. This helps reduce their inertia, making them easier to control. This means more precise movements and corrections can be made when catching a vehicle. It also helps reduce the overall size and complexity, as well as the wear on the tower, as the overall mechanism requires fewer components and is lighter. Well, still heavy. While having shorter chopsticks may seem dangerous, as it reduces the amount of area that a ship or booster can safely land in, this is likely not nearly as big of a problem as you think. What do you think? Looking at the two previous booster catches, it's clear that they landed basically right in the middle of the chopsticks and were very precise with their overall movement. Had the arms been shorter, they still would have landed safely. So all of this extra complexity and weight, which causes many problems for the chopsticks, is unnecessary. SpaceX also made numerous other changes to these chopsticks and the rest of the pad based on many of the hard lessons learned from its predecessor. However, one thing that at least so far appears to stay relatively similar is the one part that we thought may see an overhaul given problems that we had seen in the past. Today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money, not just because the name fits our #1 topic, but because they'll help you with something very valuable: your own hard-earned money. Quick question. How many subscriptions do you have? 1, 2, if you're like me, it's probably closer to 10 or 20. Streaming, gym membership, shaving cream, monthly payments are everywhere. And let's be honest, do you remember signing up for all of them? That's the game, and the industry wants you to forget so they can keep quietly draining your wallet. Enter Rocket Money. A few easy taps and it's gone. Cancelled. That's more money in your pocket. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions but also lowers bills and helps you manage your money better. Who wouldn't want that? It's extremely easy to use and it gives you what you're likely missing right now: the entire picture. What empties your bank account aren't the big purchases. It's the small stuff that trickles away silently in the background. The industry learned that a while ago, so everything is service-based now. You can learn too. Rocket Money can even negotiate bills for you: internet, cable, phone, you name it. No awkward calls, just more money in your pocket. To try Rocket Money out today and unlock more features with premium, head to rocketmoney.com/Felix or click the link in the description. Don't let subscriptions win. Use Rocket Money and stay in control. That's rocketmoney.com/Felix. The ship quick disconnect, which is also the last piece of the tower that is not at the launch site. This piece of hardware has received quite a bit of work over the last few days. It was the most recent component of the tower to be assembled. With the main structure now completed, teams have painted over the weld lines, and if the installation of the cryogenic piping hasn't already begun, it should begin any day now. SpaceX will likely finish this part quickly, as it is relatively simple compared to many of the other components. Here's a fun fact. It's actually built in two pieces. The first is the one we see here. It comprises the majority of the quick disconnect and acts as the structure that brings it around the tower. However, there is a completely separate section that extends out to meet the ship. This section is attached after the primary one. Once the internal piping for this is completed, we should see it roll to the pad, assuming everything is ready for it there. Teams have finally removed the structural support beams from the water-cooled launch deck, which were welded on top to help with construction. With the rapid progress on the launch deck, we likely won't need to wait much longer for it to be completed. However, there is a possibility that SpaceX may wait for the final touches of this launch mount until after more information is gathered. I'm not talking about information from Pad A or even launches, but rather from Messies. While SpaceX was busy using this to cryotest their next Block 2 ship, workers were also building something quite interesting to test another Block 2 prototype. Although in this case, I'm not actually talking about a Block 2 ship. Instead, I'm talking about the first proper test of a Block 2 booster prototype. And before I tell you about that, our channel metrics show over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help improve the channel and double check that you've hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our updates. Like this video if you appreciate the content and become a wise supporter for extra content. Secure your access to up to 7 picture galleries per week, satellite, aerial and ground photos and 3D animations. Chat with me, gain more insights on the topic you love. And if you want to do something crazy, check out redlineheli.com/Felix for a once-in-a-lifetime experience flying in a helicopter above Starbase. The Redline helicopter team is waiting for you. They'll show you the same views our photographers get on their Starbase flights. That's redlineheli.com/Felix for $25 off. We're waiting for you, you rock. Now back to the first test of Block 2 booster hardware. We know that SpaceX is currently building Pathfinder hardware for Block 2 boosters. This is based on the fact that we've been able to spot one of their downcomers, and now we have the first signs of a proper test of that hardware. However, this didn't result from spotting a proper next-gen booster, but rather from signs that the hardware will be tested in the Can Crusher 2.0. Remember that thing? Thanks to our most recent flyover with Redline Helicopter Tours, we were able to spot SpaceX installing these into the Can Crusher. They're hold-down clamps, and they're designed to hold onto a booster before launch. Of course, these are purely for testing purposes. However, this does confirm that the next test article loaded into the Can Crusher will be a booster. Now bear with me. SpaceX no longer needs to test the Block 1 boosters. We should see SpaceX begin building a prototype Block 2 booster any day now and rolling it to Massey's for testing. Haha, 35 engines. Given just how massive some of the changes are to the new boosters, it is likely SpaceX will want to perform many tests to ensure that the designs are feasible. SpaceX may also use this as a chance to test some ground-based equipment, as the mass of Starship is only set to grow and these hold-down clamps may not work forever. Tiny. SpaceX may wait to finish the launch mount until after these tests. However, they don't shy away from building something only to replace it a few months later. We've seen that many times before at Starbase. Speaking of old hardware, it looks like SpaceX is still moving forward with the production of Block 1 boosters for the time being. The next one being produced, Booster 17, is growing yet again, with another ring segment being rolled into the Megabay. Unfortunately, given the weather conditions, we couldn't get much detail out of this. However, given what we've seen so far, that likely doesn't matter much, as these rings are relatively incomplete when they are rolled into the Megabay for stacking. Booster 17 is likely still far from completion, and this booster may never fly, depending on when SpaceX decides to begin reusing boosters and how long it takes for the next generation boosters to start flying. We may have heard from a source close to SpaceX that they might be planning on reusing Booster 14. It isn't official, so there's not much to say about it, but if true, this would be big. As of now, it is impossible to know how far along the Block 2 booster hardware is. It's all being built inside the gigantic Star Factory. Sooner or later though, we'll get our first view. And I cannot wait. Now, the final sections of the outside of the Star Factory have been finished, with paneling covering the whole thing. There is still a lot of internal work to be done. Workstations need to be outfitted, workers need to be trained, and operation plans need to be implemented. Once this factory is fully equipped and SpaceX begins finalizing the design of Starship, we should begin seeing complete ring sections roll out of here and into the bays for stacking on a daily basis. To achieve this, despite how much SpaceX's production facility here has grown, it still plans on growing even more, with the eventual addition of a Gigabay. Although surprisingly, over the past few days, it appears the SpaceX facility that has been seeing the most growth isn't actually Starbase for once. Instead, SpaceX's facilities at the Cape have seen quite a bit of growth as well. This includes work on the Roberts Road facility, which has undergone massive groundwork ahead of its planned expansion. It's getting big. There's also the launch pad, which is experiencing rapidly increasing work due to the addition of numerous cranes and almost constant foundation work. It seems that after years of being teased about the possibility, we may actually be about to get Starship at the Cape. SpaceX isn't the only company making massive progress on facilities at the Cape. Another company has been making progress arguably just as fast. Like SpaceX, it aims to use this launchpad for a fully reusable rocket. Any guesses? Of course, I'm talking about Stoke Space. They've made great strides on the groundwork at Space Launch Complex 14, which will be the launchpad for their fully reusable Nova rocket. And that is not the only good news for the company. They've also received a massive new influx of funding, raising over $250 million. Good job, Andy! Stoke is clearly determined to make Nova work. Given that Starship is speeding closer and closer to reality, this may become one of very few rockets capable of competing. However, some partially reusable rockets could also survive, especially if governments provide incentives. And you know where that money is coming from. That's why it's been so interesting to watch all of the developments in China. While we were celebrating the launch of two completely separate reusable rockets, the New Glenn and Starship, China was busy launching its own reusable test flight. I'm talking about the launch of a prototype for the future Long March 12A, a reusable variant of the Long March 12 that is roughly comparable in size and capabilities to early Falcon 9 variants. However, it appears quite a few reusable rockets had problems simultaneously. Blue Origin lost its New Glenn first stage and SpaceX lost its second stage, the Block 2 Starship. China's test flight didn't go exactly as planned either. Unfortunately, due to the relatively secretive nature of China's public space efforts, it's unclear exactly what happened. However, most sources point to the vehicle reaching its maximum altitude of around 75 kilometers and even performing a re-entry burn. The problem occurred afterward, causing it to fail. Like those other flights, this was a test, and considering China has even less experience with vertically landing rockets than SpaceX and Blue Origin, this was to be expected. Everyone out there is having difficulties with reusability. An entirely new rocket is needed for this, not just a different paint job. That's not the only reusable rocket news from China. They are also planning to launch their first flight of the Long March 8A and build a reusable variant of it. That still seems a bit distant. However, many other players in China are also working on reusable technology. As China appears much more willing to adopt reusable technology than many other players in the space industry, I wouldn't be surprised if they managed to make it to orbit and back before the end of the year. With this new revolution in space access, many companies have been granted cheap access to space, and they are now taking advantage of it. One company in particular has made vast strides recently with the development of its space station. Sorry for the pun. I'm talking about VAST and their Haven 1 space station, which has been under development for essentially no time at all when it comes to aerospace, as the company was founded just 4 years ago in 2021. However, in that time, they've proven themselves more than worthy of our attention, considering they've gone from concept to test article of their first space station in such a short amount of time. Actually, that's the news. VAST has officially completed the construction of its structural qualification vessel, which is now shipping to the Mojave Desert for testing to ensure that it meets all the requirements. This is truly extraordinary, given all of the difficulties associated with constructing aerospace-grade hardware. In fact, this is the first time that the primary structure of a space station module has been manufactured in the US in over 20 years since the completion of the International Space Station. VAST's ability to do this in such a short amount of time speaks to its innovation. If all goes well with testing, they appear to be more than on track to launch the space station this year. Hopefully, everything goes well during these tests. This test article will be pushed to its limits in an attempt to meet NASA's strict safety requirements. If everything goes well, then VAST seems more than on track to meet its extremely ambitious goal of launching the world's first privately developed space station. One of the most exciting parts about VAST's station is its plan to use the Dragon capsule to transport crew to and from the station, and to use Starlink laser terminals to provide communication between the station and us here on the ground of up to gigabit speeds. I can't wait to see the views from the station in orbit, as they'll likely be just as clear as the Starship onboards. The view out their dome window will be incredible. Before Haven 1 launches, VAST also plans to launch Haven Demo, a satellite aimed to gather data and experience with station power and communication systems. Then after Haven 1, they'll launch the first module of its 9-module station called Haven 2, a beast. This space station is meant to be the true successor to the International Space Station. It is targeted to start launches on Starships as early as 2028. With the goal of completing in-space assembly in 2032, just 2 years after the ISS has been decommissioned. It'll be incredible to live in an era where humans can simply book a flight to a space station for a week of crazy sightseeing. It's amazing to see Falcon 9 continue to bring down the cost to orbit, enabling companies like VAST to build our future in space more affordably. Even if there is a delay, they are far ahead of all other private companies in space station development. They will likely be the first to successfully place a private space station into orbit. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A new Raptor design and our brand new Starship Block 2 design are both up. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. Also, check out our print store at shop.whataboutit.space to buy a picture for your favorite wall. A significant amount of every purchase goes directly to our photographers, and if you want to learn more about the fascinating story of SpaceX's Raptor 3 engine, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Then SpaceX begins finalizing the spitting operations. Coming out about it? What about it? Separate section that however that